Hello. It doesn't seem to matter what I do. Uh, I keep forgetting. I have to come over to a different browser and I have to get everything set up in time. And I started talking as soon as I saw my face this time. I hope that I did the right thing. Technology and getting real. So today I've been back and forth because I've been gearing up in my mind in preparations to talk about Naomi. And then this little voice keeps saying, "Oh, you've already done that. You've already done that." So, well, no, actually, I know I've talked about Tamar, and I've also talked about Abigail. I think I was saving Naomi. So, and I said, "Oh no," and I started anyway. I'm here today. I'm here now, and I'm hoping that all of this intro is helpful to the people that are coming in now. Anyway, I'm talking today about a book of the Bible that's called Ruth. However, I happen to want it to be named Naomi because I really believe this story is about Naomi. Now, I'm flipping my Bible over here because here it is. Okay. Now, look, I recognize that I'm an older woman and it would be more likely for me to relate to Naomi. On the other hand, I have been a young woman and I have been serving women of all ages for more than 30 years, women and their families and their lives, encouraging them in their Christian walk. And so I think I do. I have a pretty good perspective on the lives of women. Now, yes, I do identify a lot with Naomi. But let me just share with you why I sense that really Naomi is the one the book is about. Now let's be careful. It's named Ruth for some reason. I've asked around about that, not gotten a very good answer, like who came up with the idea, when, and so on, so on. So I'll leave the historians to figure that out. I also understand that Ruth tends to be the focus when people come back to this account, this biblical account of two women. And Ruth is the one who actually bears Obed, the child Obed, who is in the line of Christ. So I understand why she's, a leading person and everybody wants to jump on her character and all of that. But I just see it from a different perspective, and I have actually for a long time. I'm Sandra Allen Lovelace, and I have been walking with the Lord for 50 years, and a lot of that time, more than 30, I was a pastor's wife. I've been around churches, all around churches, inside, outside, roundabout. And Naomi is a character that won my heart years and years ago, specifically because of one comment that I could never really get a hold of. When she came back to Bethlehem and made the comment, well, people didn't recognize her, she was so changed, and they said to her, wait a minute, are you even Naomi? And she had had a hard time. She didn't look like herself. She probably had picked up an accent. Probably her clothes were different, on and on. And people tend to think that she said it this way. Yeah, the Lord took me out full. He brought me back empty. But if you really think about it, maybe she didn't say it that way. What if she said, yeah, the Almighty One, which is a personal appellation, naming. The Almighty One, in other words, the Sovereign One. He took me out full. and he brought me back empty. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Don't call me Naomi, call me Mara. And there you have it. Oh, good, somebody came in. And there you have it. Naomi was actually talking about how God had the right. He was the sovereign authority over her life, and she was just talking about the facts. Now, you can compare this to another Old Testament character that had a pretty tough life, and that was Job. And Job says, "Oh, the Lord giveth and the Lord taketh away. Blessed be the name of the Lord." And he gets away with it. He actually went on and on. I mean, he scraped off the boils with pottery and put dust and ashes on his head and really made a display of how difficult his life was. And it was. But when he says, God gave it to me, God has a right to take it away because he's sovereign. Everybody says Job is the greatest. Poor old Naomi gets blamed. Now, it does hang on there a little bit when she says, don't call me Naomi, call me Mara. And so when I was in Israel, I went to, made an appointment, got an appointment with an ancient language expert. It was at the Ben Gurion Institute down in the Negev desert. I was there, and I went hiking in the Zin Valley. And it was really great. So I asked him, that was the one question I wanted to know. What about this word Mara? What does that mean? Does it mean, he took me out full and brought me back empty, so now I'm Mara. Bitter. And actually, he pulled down some books, 3 different ones, one for Aramaic, one for Arabic, and one for Hebrew, I believe there were 3. He reminded me, in a region, the languages crisscross, and so on and so on. And when he did his research on the word Mara, he came up with the word actually can mean, when it's talking about food and kitchen things, it can mean strong and flavorful, which is a powerful description, isn't it? And probably, we could say similar things about Job, but probably for sure for Naomi, everything she had been through, all of the hard times that she had been through, really made her a stronger person. You find that out for yourself. And when you go through hard stuff and you have to draw closer to God and really exercise those trust muscles, the faith practices that we need to have in our lives. And we're stronger when we're out the other side of these difficult times. Well, I think that's actually what Naomi was saying. And as a matter of fact, it's borne out because he also went on, the expert also went on and said to me a little further over, as a matter of fact, there's a thing called a Mara bush. A Mara bush. And when you take and break off a limb of that, and throw it into a pool of water that's very brackish, that Mara branch will actually cleanse the water and make it sweet and safe to drink. So that's a better description about Naomi's comment when she returned to Bethlehem. And if you just change that one thing and then go back and start paying attention to the entire account of her life, I think you'll see a different kind of a person. Her character is really outlined. She was taken there. Bethlehem was in famine, and she was taken along with her husband and her 2 sons into a foreign land. And it's not sort of like moving from Virginia to Pennsylvania. It's not even the same as moving from the state of Maine to Georgia or California to the East Coast. It is much bigger than that because the Moabites and the people in Israel, the people at that time, there were battles across the boundary. There was bloodshed between them. and and so basically she went along with her husband and two sons into a foreign land that was dangerous. It was a hostile, it was hostile territory for them. Now, probably, and this is from the research I've done, probably they would have relocated themselves to a city where there would have been others like them, other of God's chosen people who would have been there. And then, anyway, that's where they went. And there's some speculation to believe that what really should have happened was Elimelech, her husband, should have stayed and done anything and everything he could to help the people in Bethlehem while the famine was going on. He was evidently a fairly well-to-do man, so he took his money and so on, and he left, and his two sons. Now just think about it from Naomi's perspective. She's a mom, she's got two sons, and dollars to donuts, she's looking ahead to having grandchildren. But they're going into hostile territory where her sons are going to be interacting with young women from a different culture, which they're not supposed to marry. Are my sons going to marry? Are they going to wait? How are we going to do this properly according to God's plan? So it's probably carrying a certain amount of anxiety about where they're going and what's going to happen in the following generations, but also worried probably about her relatives and parents and so on back in Bethlehem as she leaves. Trauma. Here's Naomi living in trauma. And she spent 10 years there, and to cut the story just a little bit short, what happened was both sons and her husband died while she was there. Though she was a single, let's say her husband died, Elimelech died, and we don't know exactly when, but from my research, I'm choosing that he died earlier. But her two sons, anyway, they did marry, excited, I'm going to have grandchildren after all, but they're marrying Moabitesses, which is not supposed to happen. And imagine the anxiety. Again, more trauma on poor Naomi. And then her two sons die, and she's a widow living in a hostile country, and also now she's got these two daughters-in-law who are part of the savage population that she's surrounded by. And yet her responsibility was to make a home for them, the same as she was doing for her family in Bethlehem, the same that she carried on as she was taken along when they went to Moab and made a home for her husband and her sons. Now she needs to make a home. How did she do that? She must have been if you relate that to the Proverbs 31 woman, there you go, Proverbs 31. She was an entrepreneur and made a life for herself and the two daughters-in-law. Always, you notice, Ruth is pointed out as being a Moabitess over and over again in the book, which is really significant when you think about the line of Christ, because there is God grafting in outsiders, what might be called Gentiles. Now, the character of Naomi obviously swayed Ruth in her walk of faith, in her basic belief. She was raised in Moab, where they had a god that they sacrificed babies and children to. Chemosh was his name, and that's where she was raised. But on the way back to Bethlehem, if you pay attention to the conversation there that Naomi had with Ruth, she said 3 different times started off by saying, there's really nothing for you ladies here, including Orpah, so it would be good for you to just go back. And Orpah left. But Ruth stayed through 2 more opportunities, and when you have 3 opportunities like that, that's one of the ways that Jews welcome believers that have adopted their faith system into their community. And the terms that Ruth used at the time would would have been very much the intimate term for God that she clearly learned, not on the street corner, not with evangelism and fellowship, but through the life and character of Naomi herself. And that's how Ruth came to know the Almighty One. And they went back to Bethlehem. I already mentioned about what happened when they got there. But now, not only did Naomi make a life for herself as a widow in this foreign land, but also for her two daughters-in-law. And then when she heard that the Lord had returned to Bethlehem because they were having harvest again, then she went back to Bethlehem with the two girls, and one of them, Orpah, returned home. But now she has to make a life. She can't just settle in and chat with her cousins and get together with the other people that are left from before the famine and just make her return to her former life. She's got a daughter-in-law who's a Moabitess, like a savage, a woman from a savage country. Oh, wow. So she has to teach Ruth. And contrary to the way other people think about it, that, oh, wasn't Ruth really wonderful? Because Naomi was so bitter. We've taken that word away, right? But still, Naomi, it really applied herself and kept on going with Naomi because she wanted to take care of this old lady, this little old lady. She just bound her life to her. Well, she did, but she bound her life to her because she said, your God will be my God. That was really her leading edge. And if you'll pay attention to the way the story's written, the account is given, she also came and reported to Naomi things that happened and listened to her counsel and followed her counsel very carefully. That's what Naomi was doing all this time. Naomi was building a household and preparing Ruth to live there, to be part of the community, to come back into fellowship, or to come into fellowship, maybe is a way to say that, with her. And then, of course, she oversaw the connection with Boaz. So, just think about that I think about it in terms of Naomi's life, going through the grief of losing her husband. Her sons marry ladies from a different culture that God has specifically said you cannot do that. And then when you look further, you're not allowed to enter the sanctuary for, I think it's 10 generations. That's pretty tough on Naomi, but, well, at least they'll have some grandchildren. And then the sons died. Now she's back home in her home country trying to, get settled in, and she's concerned about her husband's property, the lineage, and hanging on to that, according to her, to Elimelech's name, to preserve his name and everything, was really a significant thing. And yet she's also got this young woman who's going to take care of her when Naomi's gone, and she's planning and protecting, building a family. Naomi was constantly doing the next right thing. And sure enough, God blessed that, didn't he? So what if, indeed, this whole story is actually about the walk of faith of Naomi? We can't leave Ruth out of the picture because she is in there. But still, primarily, Naomi is the consistent character of it. She's there at the beginning. Ruth is woven in later. And then, toward the end, of course, we're given the account about how Obed comes into the line of Jesus. But here's Naomi. She's spent basically her lifetime taking care of other people. Now, she has loved God. She has maintained her faith during 10 years in really pressurized environment. And yet, she has carried on and is still carrying on. She's actually the one that God used to bring Ruth back to Bethlehem to meet Boaz. She's the one that God used to orchestrate the meeting and the appropriate tradition to meet Boaz and to get married and so on. And what's God's response to that? Well, he made sure that Naomi was brought into the household of Boaz. And here's Naomi, who had grieved her husband's death and grieved her son's death and grieved that she would ever have any grandchildren. especially after Orpah went back to Moab. She's now got Ruth, but what are the prospects for her? And here's God. And so often God does this. We saw that with Tamar. He gave Tamar, who was really put upon, abused, and persecuted, he gave her twin boys to take care of her, to bless her, carry on her name and her family name and so on. And God does the same thing here for Naomi, through Ruth, who's not her daughter, not her blood daughter, it's her daughter-in-law. But God provides Naomi with a grandchild to sit on her lap. And that's actually how the book closes. So the book opens with Naomi and the book closes with Naomi. And the whole story, the whole account is about Naomi's life and how it unfolds and her choosing to do the next right thing in terms of building a family, responding to God in the needs that are right before her, and staying ever faithful to Him. If that hadn't been the case, she would have stayed in Moab rather than relocate. But she knew that God had returned to Bethlehem and she wanted to go back. Again, another marker of Naomi's faith. So, I'll slow down now, but I just want to say, that's my case, I suppose. There are some other things I can bring up, but that's my case. That really, this book, what if this book is actually about Naomi? I say that is what it's about. And the rest of us can really us women can learn a lot about our life of faith from her. Primarily, intentionally, right up at the top, her priority was God. Her relationship with God and being as close to Him as she possibly could. In faith and through obedience and the things He gave her to do. And so therefore, I say, let's call the book Naomi. It isn't called that. That's okay. But, if you're watching this, see if you can convince me otherwise. You could put something in the comments or message me separately. I'm Sandra Allen Lovelace, and I love raising what-if questions. Let me know what you think. Bye-bye. Okay, end live video button is not working. End live video. Oh, we're not going to stop. Evidently, I'm going to be speaking for the next hour. Okay, time to stop. Maybe I can just close the one more time. Oh. Okay, I'm going to close the tab and see if that works. Nope, it won't work. So, what do you do when Facebook Live continues and you have other things that you need to do? I don't know.